she is a tour de force for good. Unfortunately, she had to go into a world of politics and nonprofits, and she can't understand why there's so many, I think the term she used was scumbags, but something like that. And yet what she's brought is a lot of life. And the number of times that she's texted in the morning to, hey, can you talk? And had been up until 3 a.m. speaking to a family member or getting text from one of the kids who have turned to her. I can't count them on both hands and on both feet. So it's a great calling that she had I'm sure she would rather have had many other callings to do this, but she does it extraordinarily well. And so she's gonna tell us all what to do. Oh no, that's what she usually does to us. She's gonna share her thoughts and a lot more. Cynthia Hughes. Cynthia?
You stay up with it, and I'm going to come up
Ed. So before I get started, I want to introduce you to Andrea Young. And so Andrea is a wife of a J6 defendant, and her husband has been in jail for more than 2 years, and he will be in jail until 2027. And while you didn't see Andrea in the trailer, if you go to dueprocessdenied.org, we do not charge for you to see the documentary. We want you to see it. So if you go to dueprocessdenied.org, you'll be able to see part 1, and you'll be able to hear Andrea's story and her daughter, Paige. And so before I get started with everything about Patriot Freedom Project, I want to give Andrea a minute to tell you a little bit about her story.
Okay. I'm Andrea Young. My husband is Kyle Young. He is serving an 86-month sentence. Best case scenario, he'll be home at the end of, well, at least in halfway house at the end of 2025. But his release date isn't actually until 2027. He is not a bad man. They painted a picture, they created a narrative, and they put a story together that was untrue. He is the defendant that was accused of assaulting Michael Fanone. Didn't happen. Michael Fanone was trying to draw his weapon on the crowd. My husband wasn't super close, but he heard people saying, he's gonna shoot us. And they had just found out that Ashley Babbitt had been shot. They heard that a young girl had been shot. It was emotional. He said, I can't let that happen, and he went into action, and he grabbed his wrist for 2 to 3 seconds, and they took 7 years of his life away. He took the time away from his kids that he'll never get back. I'm doing this on my own without him. And I just don't want to ruin my kids because they need a father. That's what America's about, is family. And they're taking these men away from their families on purpose. They want our children to fail. But my children are not going to fail.
That is just one of many, many stories, and you heard Derek, and if you go to dueprocessdenied.org, which I hope you will see a very sad story for Andrea. Hearing her daughter Paige will really rock you to your core. And these are the stories that have to be told, and I feel that with the children, that is where the collateral damage is. And it's not that the defendants are not important, they're very important, but I feel that we have to help these children survive the trauma that they're experiencing. To be separated from your father, and then mom is now working 1 job or 2 jobs, there's a lot of change for the children. Some children have had to change schools, they've had to change, the only home that they've known. Some children were just born when their father went to jail. In Andrea's case, her baby was only a few months old, he's now 3. So there's a lot of collateral damage on the women and the children, and nobody talks about that. We talk about January 6th, which is important, and we talk about, the charges and the sentencing and the corrupt judges, and we need to, but nobody talks about this part of it. And it's the humanitarian side, or humanitarian crisis, if you will. So, Andrea, thank you for being here with us. Andrea drove here from Iowa to come and see me. And, to see other J6 families that are here, like Derek and Will and, Wendy. She just connected with Wendy, and Wendy is telling Andrea's story. So there's a lot of heartache out here, and I really encourage you to, go deep, dig deep, and you'll see there's a lot more to January 6th than just what happened that day. The fallout is long-lasting on these families, and again, nobody is talking about that. So, do you want to stay here with me? You want to stay? I'd rather sit. Okay. So, I want to really quickly, before I start talking to you about Patriot Freedom Project, I want to say thank you, Ed, for having my back and being such a great mentor and friend, and listening to me at 7 a.m. or 2 a.m., and talking me off the ledge sometimes because, and I'm sure Miss Tiffany can relate to this. There's many days I want to, well, I don't know. She's I think a lot stronger than I am, Miss Tiffany, but there's a lot of days where I just want to throw the towel in because there's so much ugly in this. It blows my mind. I can't behave that way. And so, but when I tell Ed I'm quitting today, it's the day I'm quitting. He's like, oh, no, you're not. So thank you, Ed. And thank you, John Schlafly, for, being a great supporter. And prior to January 6th, I didn't even know who Phyllis Schlafly was, to be very truthful with you. I worked at the same company for 17 years, raising my children. I went through a horrific divorce until God sent me this angel over here. And my husband is a very hard worker, very supportive of what I'm doing. And I was, we follow politics, but I was oblivious to all this. John, thank you for supporting us, and thank you to Andy. He's not here. Andy Schlafly, he supports us too, and we just saw him last month. And thank you to my husband for putting up with me, as Ed would say. I want to thank Derek for being here and Will for being here. I want to thank you, Andrea, and Paige, and Kaylin, wherever he is. And I want to thank Sean Farish and Brennan and their wonderful stories about their new cat and their future grandbabies. For really, Sean and I recently met. I mean, I don't know if you all know who he is, but you're going to learn in a little bit. He's turned out to be a great friend, him and his beautiful wife, Brennan, and I'm really grateful for you. So thank you very much. Wendy, for making the trip here to meet with Andrea and to visit with all of us and reconnect, and your family is amazing, and I'm very grateful that you support us and you want to tell these stories, because not many people do. Thank you. Mark, we just met, and I'm glad that you came out. Thank you for taking Derek's text message and taking a chance and coming out here. I mean, I know you really didn't know who I was, although I did try to reach out to you one time, but you're very busy. And so I'm glad you're here to learn about Patriot Freedom Project. Yes. And I have a very special thank you that I have to put out here. So I don't know, in the beginning of the spring, maybe, I get this phone call from this woman, and she says, "Is this Cynthia?" And I said, "Yes." And she says to me, "I had to call you," she said, "because I had to see for myself why everybody thinks you're a Karen. A Karen." And I'm like, "What?" She said, "Because if you're as bad as some people are saying you are, well, I need to be standing where you are, and I need to be connected with you." And that is my girl, Sani, right there. And Sani and Jason, they are they are champions, first of all, for President Trump, and they've been since before 2016 when he, announced he was running. And they travel around this country and they sell all the merch, and they have helped us. They have auctioned off stuff for us. They came here. I asked them to take some time out of their very busy schedule. They just drove from West Palm to Texas and turned around and came here. And I said, there won't be a lot of action here, but she said she didn't care. She wanted to come and support us. And so I tried to force Ed to do a silent auction, and he won't let me. So I really encourage you to go and buy a hat or a t-shirt, please, because this is somebody that's really supporting President Trump and foundations like this. So thank you, Sonny. Yesterday was the first time I met Miss Tiffany from Moms for Liberty. Please forgive me for that. And I was in awe listening, to her up here yesterday and even in the other room. It was kind of like, wow, I thought there's other people out here who are so passionate and so filled with, so much heart and just anger for what's happening in this country. And I learned something yesterday. I didn't even know what was going on in Maryland until I heard Miss Tiffany talking about it. And I could tell you, this is somebody I know I would want my daughter to emulate, this woman right here. And I am really, really just so honored that you are in this room right now. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so a little bit about Patriot Freedom Project and me. So I grew up with a girl in Bradley Beach, New Jersey, and we were best friends. She had a very hard life, very difficult life, and she was raised by her grandparents, and she went off the deep end a few times and unfortunately got addicted to drugs, and she married the bad boy in town, and they had a child. And he was born with Asperger's. Not too bad, but he's on the spectrum. Very, very smart young man. He is 33 years old now. And periodically, he would have to come and live with me because his mother just couldn't get her act together at times. And so this went on, for a long time. And when he got into high school, he was one of those kids, you hear about stories of kids that want to run away from home, right? They're going to go join the military. They're going to get away from, their broken home or whatever. And he tried to do that, except his mother concocted a plan. She was going through a divorce. She was back on drugs, and she concocted a plan that she had cancer and begged him not to go into the Army as an active, military person. And so we all believed her, and he decided not to go active, and turns out she didn't have cancer at all. So it kind of really broke something in him, which I'm sure you could all imagine, you're not supposed to fail your child. So that was a turning point for her and I, and his name is Tim. I refer to him as my adopted nephew, but he's really my son in every way that it matters, because DNA doesn't really mean anything, in my opinion. So Tim lived with me on and off, and it really crushed his soul when she did that. And he decided never to try to go active, and he could have because he was young. But he did go in as a reservist, and he was a reservist in the Army at the time of January 6th. So at the time of January 6th, his mother and I shut the door on her. I had to choose. I had to make a decision, and she was important to me, even though she was broken. I think we all are in some capacity, maybe, I just had to make a decision. I chose him, and I shut the door to her because he needed family, and he doesn't have any. So I can't imagine what would have happened to Tim right now if I was not in his life. And so I haven't seen her, spoken to her in many, many years. But so Tim went to the Capitol on January 6th. He was, at the time, 12 years as an Army reservist. He had just re-enlisted. He is a college graduate. He is incredibly smart, very, very bright, but very, very bombastic. Sometimes I call him a real jackass, to be quite honest with you. He's insensitive sometimes with his jokes, and he's very rough around the edges, but he's got a heart of gold, and he's such a good person, a good guy. He's never been in trouble in his life. He went to the Capitol. He did go inside. He was in the building for 30 minutes. He did not go in the Senate rooms. He did not go into the chamber. He did not go into the state rooms. He was in the crypt. If any of you know about the Capitol, the crypt is basically like the basement. And when he was tapped on the shoulder and asked to leave, he left. He left the building. He had a suit and tie on, his favorite MAGA hat. He absolutely adores President Trump. And he left. I had no idea he went down there. I hadn't, this was after Christmas. I hadn't talked to him. We didn't talk every day. He's a grown man. He was living on the military base, working 2 jobs. So, I don't know, a week or so later, 2 weeks later, I get a phone call on a Sunday morning. My husband and I are making breakfast, and it's, we're getting ready to come up on a holiday weekend. He was going to be off, and I get this phone call, this early morning phone call from Tim's best friend that Tim had been arrested. And I was like, what? Tim's arrested? And then he told me for what? Because he went to the Capitol. And I just was like, oh my God. Because at that point, we had all been seeing the news, the crazy news. And I'm a person of action. And it's just a natural thing for me. Because I too have had a bit of a troubled childhood. I had great parents, very loving parents. When they got divorced, they kind of forgot about me and my brother, to be very truthful. And I had to kind of figure out things all on my own. And so I could relate to Tim in a lot of ways. I'm a natural person of action. Something needs to be done. I'm your girl. Okay, I will jump into action, and I get it done. You could always count on me. Let me tell you. So this was a Sunday. Within an hour, I found out where he was. And you got to remember, this is the beginning of 21, so we're still in the height of COVID. So I found out where he was. I couldn't visit him because they weren't allowing in-person visits, and I had to hope and pray that he could remember my phone number because, with your cell phone, right? Everybody's numbers are programmed, and you don't remember. I couldn't even tell you your phone number, Ed. So fortunately, 3 days later, I finally, I heard from him, and man, that first phone call, it was brutal. It was brutal. I cried like a baby. I may not have given birth to him, but he's my son in every way that it matters. And he was just so sad. And so he was in a jail close by to us, and the marshals came and picked him up without notice, and they brought him to another jail in New Jersey, and then again without notice. And in that jail, I thought quickly, let me get power of attorney on him right now. And so we had a wonderful woman in that jail. She was a ombudsman, if you know what that is. She was very helpful. She said she didn't care why he was there. It wasn't her business. She got those power of attorney papers signed for us, thank God, because they are really, right, Andrea? They are really, really needed. So from there, he got moved to New York. From New York, he got moved to Oklahoma. From Oklahoma, he got moved to West Virginia. And then from West Virginia, he got moved to Virginia. And then from Virginia, he got moved to D.C. And this was all within 5 weeks, bounced around. When he got to D.C., he got COVID. And he was in solitary confinement. And it was so funny to me, and I have to say it like that because, so my husband was a cop. He's recently retired, and he's driving me around the country. So my husband was a cop at the time in New Jersey, and he said to me, that month or a couple months later, no, I think it was that month, they were doing a special operation we live in New Jersey, so it's a very blue state, and so that joke of a governor there, he was releasing actual criminals from jail because of COVID. And so here's a kid in the D.C. jail who we had no idea what we were in for at this point with the D.C. jail. He was in solitary confinement, suffering from COVID, not being able to see a doctor, not being able to take a Tylenol and have comfort because he had a headache or he had the chills, And he remained in solitary confinement for more than 1 year. And what you've heard on the news, there is no exaggeration to that. When I tell you solitary confinement, I truly mean solitary confinement. 23 hours per day in a jail cell. No exaggeration, okay? So January, and then February, and then March, and by April, I was just like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I've had enough. You know, you don't know when he's going to call. You can't mail packages. You can't send mail. You can't visit. You can't have video visits. It was insane, and more people were getting arrested. How I met Andrea was because somebody turned me on to a story on one of the social media sites. This young lady was selling her plasma to make extra money after her husband was arrested. And I just thought to myself, this is much bigger than any of us and bigger than anything we can even begin to fathom. And I said, something has to be done. So Tim and myself together, after he didn't call me for a few days, and I was like, I haven't heard from you, you can't do this. And he said, well, it was Father's Day. I don't have children. These dads need to talk to their children. And that's Tim, that's what he does. And I said, okay, we need to figure something out here, because you couldn't get information from anybody. There was nowhere to go. So I started what was supposed to be a little family group, a little family community, to be able to go somewhere to say, hey, did you hear about this person? Did you hear about this charge? Did you see this news article? Did you see what Wendy wrote? Did you see, what Julie Kelly wrote, whatever. And next thing I knew, I got a phone call from Dinesh D'Souza, as he had learned about this little J6 community. And I was driving my car, and he's like, Cynthia, this is Dinesh D'Souza. And I'm like, I sell auto parts for a living. I mean, Dinesh D'Souza is calling me. And he says, I hear what you're doing, and I'm just so proud of you. And that's the words he used. And I'm so happy, and I'm this, and I'm that. And he says, and I just, overnighted you a check. And I'm just like, this is me. I'm like, okay. I didn't know you yet, Ed, I don't think. We were about to. Of course I said thank you. Of course I said thank you. He sent me a check for $100,000. Yes. And he said, it's back to school. Please get those kids whatever they need for school. Whatever kids you're talking, you're helping, whatever, please get them what they need. Backpacks, new sneakers, Lunchables, whatever it's going to take. He said, and make sure those mothers have what they need for Christmas. And then he sent me another check. And I just was like, oh my God, okay. Well, I'm a responsible person, Rachel. I'm a responsible person. And I'm just like, I have to make sure I'm doing the right thing here, because this is a really big deal. So I immediately went to a lawyer, got some advice, immediately went to an accountant, got some more advice, opened up a bank account, deposited that check, and there it sat for a minute, right? Well, I don't know, a couple weeks later, this dude comes into the picture. And we have this great conversation, and he's like, you should do this, maybe you should do this. And we have, we're just going on and on. And that was the beginning of, well, your nightmare, because now I call you every day, 17 times a day. And so in all seriousness, Ed really taught me a lot in a very short amount of time. And next thing I knew, I hear from the great Steve Bannon. I think Steve Bannon's great. I love him. He's wonderful. He's been amazing. He has been amazing. And so he's like, I want you to come on. I want you to talk about this. And so I went on his show like every week from October of 21 until I think January or February of 21. And he literally had me on the show, and we raised a lot of money. And when we did, I realized very quickly we had to not only help these families, but we had to start getting lawyers involved. And so I went on a crusade, and I connected with probably 30 lawyers, and I spoke to all of them, and there were a lot of cases of people that needed a new lawyer, and these public pretenders had to be, replaced, because it was just, you couldn't talk to a lot of these public defenders, or even some of these, CJA attorneys, without them criticizing Trump. And I would explain to, when we had our public defender, he could not have a conversation with Tim or I without bashing Trump. And I said to him one day, I said, dude, how does Tim have faith going into his trial with you? How can anybody have peace of mind
when their lawyer and their judge is constantly bashing the guy that these people are caught up in this for. And I knew then something had to be done. So I learned how to get a CJA attorney appointed to a case. I did my own homework, I did my own due diligence, and that is what I did for a ton of people, including Tim. And we didn't pay for our attorney, and we have had a great military attorney in Pennsylvania. He's a good attorney, but they had it in for Tim at trial, so no matter who was in that courtroom, it could have been Jesus himself. He was going to be found guilty, like everybody, because not a single case should be adjudicated in the city of DC, not a single case. And so, that's right. And that just went on from there. And so we have spent more than $1 million on legal fees for a lot of these families. There's almost 1,200 people caught up in this. It's impossible, on $2 million to help everybody. You can't give out, these giant grants. You have to be, you want to be effective. So to me, the priority is the women and the children. Andrea just said to me today, do you realize if I had not have met you, I would have had to sell my house and get rid of my dogs? I mean, think about the gravity of that. Why do the families have to make these choices? We're housing immigrants in New York City, all over this country, but we can't take care of our own people here in this country. She can't even get social services. Not that I'm trying to tell your business, but if she had to go get food stamps or she had to go get, some kind of welfare, social service, she makes too much money, they said. It's insanity to me. They don't have health insurance. She had to go get state-run health insurance, and her daughter had a toothache a few weeks ago, and so she called me. She was upset. She said, I can't find a decent oral surgeon to help, this with this tooth. This tooth had to come out. There was no getting around it, and so she was, pretty sad. So Patriot Freedom Project paid for Paige. There was no question asked. This is why we've created Patriot Freedom Project. I call Ed. I got a new application. You don't even need to call me. Go to any oral surgeon you want and get the tooth out because this child needs to be out of pain. And so that's what happened. And so that's the purpose of Patriot Freedom Project. We are helping these children survive this trauma. And we're doing that in many ways. By helping mom be able to stay in her home, by helping her be able to pay the light bill, by being able to say to her, don't choose to pay a bill at Christmas and having to buy a Christmas present. These children need to have as much sense of normalcy as possible. And, it's pretty non-existent for most of these families. And so we're doing everything that we can. We haven't been able to help everybody. If I had $10 million, I probably could. But I'm doing the best that I can. I've helped hundreds of families, Ed and I, and our other board member, the great Rachel Semmel, who worked for President Trump in his White House as one of his comms directors. She's got a heart of gold. She's wonderful, and she's very passionate about this. And we're very, very good about helping these families. We're a really good team, me, you, and Rachel, Ed. And so Patriot Freedom Project, we also have a mental health community. It's not very big, but it's growing. And one of our J6 moms who works in the mental health field, she runs these 2 calls every week over Zoom, and the kids come on, and some of them families come on, and there's a little bit of prayer, there's a little bit of uplifting, support, who's maybe experiencing more anxiety, more grief. There's just so much work to be done in this, and now we're helping in Michigan. We're helping in Michigan because this is so much further and far beyond January 6th. This is weaponization of government, and it's the federal level, it's the state level, it's the county level, and it trickles down to the municipal level, and nobody's talking about it. And it takes women like myself and Miss Tiffany over here to speak out and to do what we're doing. And if you don't come across people like this, how are you going to know? I had no idea what's going on in Maryland. And I don't live far from Maryland. And when they come to Maryland, I'm going because you know what? I'm outraged by that. I am outraged by that. And I'll be a little personal with you. I have a gay child, and I'm proud of her. I'm very proud of her. nobody asks to have a gay child, but she is, and there's nothing I can do about it. She's hardworking, she's educated, she has a college degree, she's girly, she's wonderful, and there's nothing I could do about her choice. But even my own child doesn't support this crazy nonsense that we're seeing in the transgender community. She knows it shouldn't be, and she's very, even-keeled. It's none of my business, and it's whatever. I'm staying in my lane. But it's just, and we need to see more, I think, these young, if there's going to be gay people, that don't support this transgender, crazy ideology. I think we should hear more from them. I've asked my daughter to speak out. I've asked her. She probably wouldn't, but but I think that we need to start seeing more of that. There's so much going on and so much ground to cover. I mean, there's not enough hours in the day, Ed, right? Every day I have my list and I call Ed. I'm like, Ed, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this today. And he's like, okay. And then the next day I got 10 more new things. And he's like, slow your roll. There's no time to slow my roll. There's no time. It's just, you have to get into action. And I hope to learn from Miss Tiffany how to set up chapters, because you know what? That's what we need. And it needs to start in West Virginia with you, Derek. Seriously, okay? And because we can't let this stand. We cannot let a government tell us what's going on in Maryland. You can't opt out of a pride book or a pride reading or whatever. Tell me I can't opt out of it. Watch what happens, okay? I'm from Jersey. Watch what happens. So I don't know. I just feel that the fallout and the collateral damage falls to these women and these children, and it's heartbreaking. And I've heard hundreds and hundreds of stories. My phone, sometimes my husband says, please put the phone, silence it. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I have a hard time shutting it off because, and Andrea will tell you, I am very hands-on with these families. They have full access to me. Derek, Will, you all know. Nice, Will, nice. And I'll just say this before we bring Will up and Sean up. I did a press conference on Capitol Hill, Ed and I, and Congressman Taylor Greene came, and Congressman Biggs, and Congressman, the greatest Congressman, Louis Gohmert, and who else was there? There was a couple other ones. And we had a really, really good press conference. We had a lot of press coverage, and President Trump saw it. And so this was in June of last year, and about a month later, he had somebody from his team, reach out to me, and next thing I knew, I was having what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting turned out to be 4 hours. And I was able to share a lot with him and show him video footage of homes being violently raided, of wives in their pajamas being held at gunpoint, children being at home when the door is kicked in, and they don't know what's happening, flashbangs being thrown through a window. There was a family in Florida, the house was violently raided, and the government, when they showed up at the house, and let me tell you, there was 30, 40 different armored vehicles. They threw so many flashbangs into this home of this family that the bathroom caught on fire, okay? And that's what's happening, and you guys don't know about that. We had a guy in Pennsylvania just, I don't know, how long ago was it, Wendy? 2 months ago, Stephen. Misdemeanor charges. Government didn't care. The feds showed up, kicked the door in, threw a bunch of flashbangs into his house. It's not necessary to do this. People are willing to surrender. They're willing to open up their door and say, come on in. But the government wants shock and awe, and they want to put the fear of God in all of us because they want you to know that if you oppose the current administration or anybody that's in office that you don't support, this is what they can do to you. And right now they can get away with it because we have a Congress and a Senate, and we have a administration who doesn't do anything. I respect Congressman Massey, but I got to tell you, he's all talk, just like the rest of them. Lip service, lip service, lip service. They do nothing to help these people, and it's like enough. So we need Derek to get elected, okay? So everybody move to West Virginia to vote for Derek. And, and that's another thing. Start primarying all these people. Mitch McConnell's got to go. Maybe Tom Massey's got to go. I don't know. But, we have to see action, and we need to stop hearing what they're going to do. I mean, I'm listening to him talk about Jim Jordan. Well, don't even get me started on Jim Jordan, okay? I love Jim Jordan. I was sitting next to the president just a few weeks ago when him and Jim Jordan were having a conversation on the phone about a wrestling match, okay? And I'm like, this is what Jim Jordan's worried about. There's more than, so here's some J6 facts for you. Let me give you some J6 facts. So we have over 1,100 or just about 1,100 people that have been, arrested, charged, and indicted. And more than just under 500 have already been sentenced. And of that number, 100 have been sentenced to, I think, home confinement. Less than 100 have only been sentenced to time served out of almost 1,200 people. It's pretty disgusting. 1,000 people are charged with entering or remaining in a restricted or federal building. It's a misdemeanor charge. Well, starts out that way, and then it can get complicated. 100 of this number, people were charged with remaining in a restricted or federal building with a deadly weapon. What is considered a deadly weapon according to the DOJ? Some things that are considered deadly weapons, according to the DOJ, well, I don't know if any of you have seen the video, but there's a very large Trump sign that was outside, where was it? I don't remember, Will, like outside the tunnel or whatever. It's about as big as this platform here, okay? If you so much as went like this to that sign, you were charged with assault, okay? You were charged with assault with a deadly weapon. I'm not even kidding you. That is what they're doing. 350 people were charged with assaulting or resisting, arrest, and 100 of that were charged with that same charge also using a dangerous or deadly weapon. Many people were charged with assault with with or without a deadly weapon who did not commit assault at all. Over 300 people have been charged with this crazy charge called obstruction of an official proceeding. More than 50 people have been charged with conspiracy, at the time that I wrote this at least, and more than 400 defendants have taken plea deals because they're petrified. 80 defendants have been found guilty between, either by a jury or, at a bench trial. And 10 plus people have not pled but agreed to had a stipulated trial, which is you're basically agreeing to something, even though it might not be true. It's called a stipulated set of facts. So the obstruction charge is the most controversial charge in J6. And, maybe Ed or Will actually, we'll call Will up and he can give you some more facts about that. So these judges, they're overcharging people. They're overcharging these defendants. And the sentences, well, I don't know if you guys know who Enrique Tarrio is, but Enrique Tarrio was just sentenced to 22 years in prison, and he wasn't even on the grounds on January 6th. He wasn't even in the Capitol. He wasn't on the grounds. He wasn't even in D.C., okay? So because of scary talk and because of some rhetoric and because of maybe some previous misdemeanor type behavior, let's say, they want to put him in jail for 22 years. They also want to tie him to President Trump, and they want to use this man to actually be able to charge President Trump with insurrection, and that's a whole nother thing, and Ed will talk about that at some point. So those are some basic facts, and it's not stopping. We just had 10 new arrests. It's probably more now in the last 2 weeks. Well, I don't know where you think you're going. So I encourage you to do your due diligence. Don't believe everything that you read out of the Gateway Pundit, quite honestly. Don't believe everything that you read online. There's a lot of unfortunate, infighting. People think who's getting more money. It doesn't matter. What matters is January 6th is what matters. It's something that has plagued our country and will never leave us. It has changed everything for many of us, all of us, and for this country. And if we don't get it under control, we don't get the 2020 election under control, we are in big trouble for the foreseeable future. And so thank you for listening, and I appreciate all of you.